No cameras were allowed that morning. No phones. No press. Just black umbrellas, trembling hands, and an air so heavy it seemed to bend the light. Yu Menglong's funeral wasn't supposed to happen this way, not under rain that refused to stop, not in a hall guarded by silence more brutal than any scream. The invitation had been printed on matte ivory, without his name. Just a single line, for the one who never returned. The first to arrive were the ones who had the most to hide. A line of black sedans rolled up the hill to a cemetery that didn't exist on any public record, one surrounded by bamboo and mist, half an hour from the old city. Their tinted windows hid familiar faces, actors, producers, and men whose shoes never touched wet soil. When the doors opened, it wasn't the scent of flowers that filled the air. It was something else, something metallic, faintly electric, like rain hitting cold steel. At 8:47 a.m., the gates closed. The guards turned their backs on the world outside. Inside, the whispers began. They say his coffin isn't empty. They say his body was never found. They say someone switched the casket at dawn. No one said his name. Not aloud. Not after what had happened. The coffin rested on a low platform draped in white silk, a color that should have symbolized peace, but somehow looked too clean, too deliberate. A single camera hung from the ceiling, red light blinking faintly, supposedly for security reasons. But the mourners noticed something else. The glass of the coffin was fogged from the inside. At first, they told themselves it was condensation, the cold air meeting the polished glass. But the fog was rhythmic, pulsing in and out, like breath. An old woman near the front, Menglong's acting coach from his earliest days, fainted when she saw it. They said it was grief. But when she was revived, she whispered to the medic, "He's not gone, he's trapped." They sedated her immediately. Half an hour into the ceremony, the lights flickered. The priest, a man no one recognized, continued speaking in a language that wasn't Mandarin, some older tongue, foreign and guttural. Every few words, his voice cracked like static. The mourners looked around, confused. Then someone's phone, which had been supposedly confiscated, began vibrating uncontrollably inside a purse. The screen flashed a single notification. Live feed. Room 16. Stream active. No one moved. The woman's hands shook as she unlocked it. On the screen was a dim video, a hospital bed, white sheets, and a man's hand twitching. A nurse's voice whispered off camera, "Don't wake him. They're still watching the funeral." The phone was snatched away. The signal cut instantly. But the damage was done. From that moment, nobody believed the coffin held Yu Menglong. When the choir began to sing, their voices cracked like broken porcelain. The melody wasn't one of mourning, it was a lullaby. Soft, nostalgic, too tender for a funeral. It was the same song Menglong had sung in his last drama, the one censored after his death. A song that ended with the line, "Even if I sleep, I hear the footsteps." The lights dimmed. A gust of wind tore through the room, scattering petals like falling ash. And then, just for a second, everyone heard it, a faint hum under the choir's voices. It wasn't feedback. It was a voice. A man's. Breathing, whispering, "I can see you." Cameras flickered back on. The power surged. The coffin glass cleared. Inside, there was no face. Only a mask. A perfect silicone cast of Yu Menglong's smile. After the ceremony, mourners were invited to pay respects privately. One by one, they entered a small room behind the altar, where a projector was playing a short film, allegedly a tribute. But the film wasn't part of the official program. It showed shaky footage, behind-the-scenes clips, blurred frames, and fragments of an unreleased project. In one scene, Menglong looked straight into the camera and said, "If they tell you I'm dead, don't believe them. Look for the rain. It remembers everything." The screen went black. When the next mourner entered, the film had been replaced by a corporate montage, smiling faces, fake tears, flowers. The projector was later found broken in half. No one claimed responsibility. By noon, the sky had turned silver. The journalist stationed 2 kilometers away reported lightning without thunder, as though the clouds were flashing in silence. At the exact time his ashes were supposedly lowered, the temperature dropped 8 degrees. Someone said they saw footprints leading away from the grave, barefoot, fresh, too long to belong to any mourner. A young assistant tried to take a photo, but her camera lens shattered the moment she pressed record. Her phone died instantly. When it rebooted, her gallery was filled with hundreds of blurred images, all of them of the same face. His. Smiling. After the funeral, 5 attendees vanished within 24 hours. A producer, a driver, a cameraman, and 2 unknown men from the security team. Their last recorded GPS location was the cemetery. Their cars were found abandoned at a toll gate, headlights still on. Inside one of the vehicles was a voice recorder, soaked in rain. The audio was muffled, but one line was clear enough to make national news before it was pulled from every site. He stood up. He asked where the others went. The file was deleted from every cloud. Even backups. But fragments survived, shared through encrypted forums, whispered in midnight streams, until the story became legend. 2 weeks later, a journalist bribed her way past the guards and returned to the cemetery. She found the coffin unsealed, the soil still wet. Inside, there was nothing but water, clear, cold, unmoving. Floating on its surface was a single petal from the funeral wreath. When she touched it, her hand began to bleed, not from a cut, but from small words etched into her skin: "Stop digging." She published her story. Her account was deleted within an hour. That same night, she vanished. Months later, a security camera from a private archive surfaced online. The footage showed the cemetery at dawn, mist rolling over the graves. Then, movement. A figure stepped out from behind the marble arch, barefoot, wearing the same black suit from the funeral. His face was hidden under the shadow of the umbrella he carried. He stopped in front of the camera, looked up, and whispered something. Experts enhanced the footage. Lip readers from 3 countries confirmed the same phrase: "It wasn't my funeral." The clip was only 5 seconds long before it cut to static. No one knows who uploaded it. But every few months, around the anniversary of his death, the video reappears, posted from a different IP, on a new platform, with the same caption: "Remember the rain." Now, every time it rains in Shanghai, people say they see a reflection that doesn't belong to them. A face flickering in puddles, in car mirrors, in phone screens. Some swear it's just a story, an urban myth born from grief and obsession. But others, the ones who were there that day, still wake up at 8:47 a.m., the exact time the gates closed, with the same dream. The same sound of footsteps on wet stone. And a voice whispering, "I can see you." Rain kept falling even after the crowd began to leave. Not the kind that cleanses, the kind that soaks through the bones, heavy, relentless, like it's trying to erase something. The cemetery's marble steps turned slick and gray, and the wind carried whispers that didn't sound like the living. Some mourners stayed behind, not out of grief, but out of disbelief. They lingered near the gates, pretending to look for umbrellas, for rides, for lost scarves, but their eyes kept drifting back to the coffin. The silk had begun to stain. Not red. Not black. Just a faint, silvery mark that moved slowly across the fabric like ink spreading underwater. Someone finally went closer. A cameraman. Young, uninvited, one of those who had slipped in through the back fence to film the forbidden. He aimed his hidden lens at the stain, zooming in to capture proof. But when he adjusted the focus, the stain moved. It curled upward, like smoke, like breath, forming letters that almost looked human. He blinked, and the camera screen turned white. He tried to turn it off. It wouldn't. The record button stayed lit. Then, from the tiny speaker, came a faint whisper. Not in his voice. Not in anyone's voice from that day. It was him. "Don't record this," the voice said. "They'll come for you next." The cameraman dropped the device. When he picked it up again, the entire file was gone. Every clip on his SD card, deleted, replaced by a single image. Yu Menglong, standing in the rain, eyes open. Inside the hall, workers began to dismantle the altar, collecting flowers, folding chairs, cleaning the melted candle wax from the floor. But one of them, a florist hired that morning, noticed something strange. The lilies closest to the coffin hadn't wilted. They had grown. Their petals were damp with condensation, breathing almost, turning toward the coffin like living things reaching for warmth. When she leaned in, she noticed drops forming on the inside of the glass again. Not just fog this time. Water. The droplets moved upward instead of down. She stepped back and whispered, "It's raining inside." A sound came from within the coffin. A slow, deliberate tap. Then another. The lights flickered again. Someone screamed. Someone else said it was just wind. but the taps became rhythmic, impatient, a pulse, a heartbeat. Out by the gates, two security men in black coats were arguing with a man who refused to leave. He claimed to be from the production team of Yu Menglong's last unfinished project. His voice shook as he explained that the priest inside, the one reading from that strange script, was never part of the official arrangement. There was no priest, he said. We didn't hire anyone. The guards exchanged glances. When they turned to look back at the hall, the priest was gone. His robe, still damp from rain, lay folded neatly on the front pew, and underneath it, a cassette tape. The kind no one used anymore. Labeled only with 2 numbers, 847. They played it later, in secret. The sound was faint, distorted, but under the static they could hear the same phrase repeated over and over. He's not gone. Just misplaced. Back inside, the old coach, the one who had fainted earlier, woke in the infirmary at the back of the hall. The nurse tending to her had stepped out for water, leaving her alone for less than a minute. When the nurse returned, the woman was sitting up, humming the same lullaby from the service. Her eyes were open but empty. Her fingers traced shapes into the sheets, shapes that looked like characters but weren't. When asked what she was writing, she said softly, he wanted to come home. Then she pointed at the window. Rain had begun to draw streaks across the glass, spelling out something that vanished too quickly to photograph. But one nurse swore she read it. Not yet. Outside, thunder rolled for the first time all day. A hollow, metallic sound, like something large shifting underground. A few mourners waiting for their cars said they felt the ground tremble beneath their shoes. In the reflection of the hearse's rear window, someone noticed a second coffin, faint, almost transparent, beside the real one. When they blinked, it was gone. The driver of that hearse was never identified. His face was hidden under a cap, his name absent from the funeral registry. When the vehicle reached the crematorium later that night, it drove straight past the gate and into the forest. It was found the next morning, empty. Engine still running. Inside, the seats were wet. Rainwater again, but no sign of a leak. On the dashboard lay a single folded photograph, the same invitation from the funeral, but with a handwritten addition beneath the printed line. For the one who never returned, yet. A month later, when the cemetery's staff dug up the ground to replace the drained soil, they found something buried exactly beneath where the coffin had been. Not a body. Not remains. Just a reel of old film, sealed in a metal canister. When developed, the footage showed Yu Menglong, alive, walking through the same cemetery, carrying an umbrella, stopping at an unmarked grave. He looked directly into the camera. The timestamp on the reel showed the date of the funeral. In the background, rain fell in the same rhythm as that day. Slow. Relentless. Watching. They say the fog around the cemetery never lifted after that. That sometimes at dawn, when the world is quiet enough, you can hear faint singing from beneath the soil, the same lullaby, echoing between the stones. And those who attended the funeral, those who stayed to the end, all share the same memory, though none will admit it publicly. That just before the final prayer, when everyone had bowed their heads, someone laughed. Soft, low, and unmistakably his. When they looked up, the coffin lid was already closed.